What is going on, YouTube? Back again with another video, and today, as I started a new era with the podcast, Untitled Football Podcast. I didn't know what to call it. Well, I mean, I had names to like I had ideas for names, but like most of them were like way too long, and I didn't really want to do a long ass title because it's not really a good idea. But yeah, Untitled Football Podcast. New era on the channel. Have some ideas. We're gonna do some division previews. So we're gonna start off with the NFC West today. I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Probably NFC North, or I don't even know if it's gonna come out tomorrow. We'll see. But yeah. Then I'm gonna probably do some draft stuff, and we're probably gonna do some week previews and some week reviews, stuff like that. Get some guests on eventually because that's what podcasts do. But we're going to start it off alone, you know. Your host with the most. Here we go. NFC West preview for the 2020 NFL season. Let's get right into it. So, I'm going to give a little bit of an advanced analytical view and using some advanced stats, all that type of stuff. You know, a little, I wouldn't say it's different. There's definitely people that use advanced stats, but that's just the way I want to run my podcast, you know, more advanced stats, advanced analytical view of the game of football. And yeah, we're going to start off this preview with the San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl runner-ups. They had a 10-point lead, choked it. You know, if you ask me, I'd say mainly because of a lack of aggression. Like, their fourth down aggressiveness was non-existent, where Andy Reid was going for it on fourth downs at all costs. I think Andy Reid just wanted that game more than Shanahan did. Like, I mean, Shanahan stayed aggressive from like a pass-run ratio point of view, but like, he didn't go for it on fourth down ever. Like, there was like one time in specific where it was a tie ball game. It was like 4th and 2, and they were at like their 25, and they kicked the field goal. I wouldn't say that's the play that lost them the game, but I would say it definitely decreased their chances by a lot, especially going up against an offense as explosive as the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't agree with that decision, but whatever. Could they make it back? Maybe. I don't know. Because like now you have Tom Brady in the NFC. You have Tom Brady in the NFC now. You have like the Seahawks are still close, I guess. I mean, the NFC, there are teams that could win it. Like, the Cowboys look like they're contenders on paper, but, like, every year they're contenders. You know, this is our year, then go to 8-8. But, yeah, it gets kind of annoying from their fans saying it's always the Cowboys' year, until it's not. But this isn't about the Cowboys. We'll get into that in a future podcast. But this is about the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers made it to the Super Bowl last year. They traded DeForest Buckner in the offseason, added Javon Kinlaw, Henry Ruggs to the team. Not Henry Ruggs. Added Javon Kinlaw and Brandon Ayuk to the team. I don't know why I said Henry. Well, I know why I said Henry Ruggs because I had a mock there, but whatever. The mock season's way long gone. But they added Kinlaw and Ayuk, who are, I mean, I didn't think that's where they should have gone. I mean, they could have went like CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy and Christian Fulton in like the later in their 30th pick, but they in the 31st pick, but they didn't. They traded up for Brandon Ayuk. I'm still not a big fan of that move, but on paper, their playmakers aren't all that great. Like, Deebo Samuel broke his foot, so you have Deebo Samuel with a screw in his foot. George Kittle, who is a beast. Brandon Ayuk, who I'm lower on than most people. And then he's probably the second best guy. Like, other than Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, that receiver core is kind of rough, not gonna lie. And their secondary is a bit rough as well. Like, I can see this team regressing. Well, not rough. Like, Sherman was one of the best corners in the NFL. Second best corner in my opinion. He just didn't allow yards. He was just like a black hole. Nothing came over to his side of the field. He allowed the second lowest amount of yards this past season. And everybody will point to Sammy Watkins. Like, that's literally one game, like one play in one game. He allowed 73 yards, like 70. Hold on, let me check the exact amount. He allowed 72 yards in that game, which is by far the most he allowed the entire season. It was his worst game of the year. And it's still better than, like, I mean, comparing that to, like, Stephon Gilmore, Tre'Davious White, Marlon Humphrey, like, Jair Alexander. Well, I wouldn't say he's a top-tier corner, but, like, those guys all have 100-plus yard games dropped on their head, unlike Sherman. But outside of Sherman, the secondary is a bit rough, you know? Sherman played out of his skin. I don't know how well he's going to play next year. Sherman was fantastic last year. And if he regresses, the rest of the secondary around him isn't that good. He was probably a bit of a force multiplier in that secondary, like elevating everyone else around him because he was so good and last year. But like those guys could, like the guys around him, if he regresses, could take a step down, and then you have a pretty bad secondary. You lost DeForest Buckner. You still have Arik Armstead, who, even though he was good, wasn't a great pass rusher last year. He was a better run defender. He was a good pass rusher. But you don't blitz that. Like they don't blitz that often. So if Arik Armstead doesn't have a career year next year, which is totally likely, then, I mean, your pass rush could regress now. And now you're looking at a total defensive regression with a lack of true weapons on the offensive end. Like, it could get bad for the 49ers next season because of all those factors. Now, they still have their running game. They still have Kyle Shanahan, which always gives me hope because, I mean, Shanahan's one of the best play callers in the NFL. Consistently elevates the people. It consistently elevates the talent that he has at hand. Matt Ryan, who was really kind of a good quarterback before that, but, like, Kyle Shanahan took him to another level with his scheme and all that type of stuff, right? Could he do that for Jimmy Garoppolo? Now, I do think Matt Ryan's a couple tiers above Jimmy Garoppolo, even though I am pretty high on Jimmy Garoppolo, but, like, I don't know. I don't think he's Matt Ryan level. I don't think he'll ever get to that level. And the supporting cast around him isn't that good, but, you know, Shanahan can scheme guys open, all that type of stuff. Their schedule this year is pretty easy. They play the NFC East. So that means you have to play the Redskins once, you know. And then they play, I think they play the NFC, I think they play the NFC, the AFC East. Let me check that real quick. Because if so, that's a relatively easy schedule. So they could get worse, but the results will stay the same or stay in a similar range because of the fact that their schedule is relatively easy. They play the NFC West. They play the AFC East and the NFC East. And they do play the NFC West because that's the division they're in. But they also have the Saints on their schedule and the Packers. The Packers, who I think were a pretty fraudulent 8-8, pretty fraudulent 13-3 team last year. They had a really easy schedule. They played 7 backup quarterbacks. I mean, this isn't about the Packers. I'll get to that in a future podcast as well. The Packers were super fraudulent. They played Kyle Allen, whatever. I'll get into that later in a later podcast. But the 49ers, they have a relatively easy schedule. So even if they do get fundamentally worse, like the results won't get worse because of how pretty cakewalk their schedule is, aside from their division and the Saints. Yeah. The 49ers, though, I mean, I don't think they can win. I really don't think they can make it out of the NFC again. Like, maybe, but like I feel like the Saints are a better overall roster and better at quarterback. Same with the Buccaneers. Like I don't know. Could they even win their division? I think they could win their division because, I mean, I think Seattle has some pretty big deficiencies in some key areas. I'll get into that a little bit later today. Yeah. Like the 49ers, I mean, they'll still have their run game, which, I mean, maybe was a bit overrated. They were only like 14th in EPA per play from on rushing plays. Like, I mean, their rushing offense wasn't as good as people would like to tell you it was. Like, they won a lot of their games through passing, and they're running later. Like, pass first, run later type thing. Like, pass and then run when you're up is what the San Francisco 49ers did. They were 16th in EPA per rushing play, which would be pretty unexpected. Like, if you told me that, I'd probably be shocked. But it was true, though. Like, their yards per carry as a team weren't that high. It was only like 4.9, I think. But yeah, I mean, the 49ers, I'm lower on them than a lot of people are, because there's just so many reasons why that team could regress next season and not be as good as they were this past season, because a lot of things went their way. Their pass rush, from just a front four standpoint, was elite. Ark Armstead had a career year, I already went through that. He probably won't do that again, which might make the coverage unit take a slight step back, even though, like, okay, I don't know. Dang. I mean, like, I feel like they don't blitz a lot. Like, they get a lot of pressure just from their front four. So if that takes a step back, because Ark Armstead doesn't have a career year again, which is totally possible, like I said before, Kinlaw might not be as good as DeForest Buckner out of the gate, because he is kind of raw coming into the league, even though he's athletic as hell. I really like Javon Kinlaw, but like, the weapons aren't that great. Like, it could get a bit rough, but their record might come out to a similar number as it did last year, because their schedule's easy. They have an easy schedule, and like, it probably won't show to the playoffs, where they play a good team and then they might lose. Like, they could lose to the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Saints. They could split season series with the Seahawks or something, or split season series like the Cardinals, because the Cardinals somehow almost beat the 49ers twice, which is really weird. And they had just added D-Hop. So, I don't know. Is it, the 49ers, I really don't know what they'll be. Like, they could be like an 11-5 team. They could be 13-3. All I know is that I'm lower on the 49ers than a lot of people. Like, their team, top to bottom, isn't that great, especially if their pass rush takes a decline. So that means they won't be getting pressure at the same rate they did, because they don't blitz. Like I said, they don't blitz, but they were like top 1 or 2 in the league in pressure percentage. So, like, that has to take a bit of a step back, maybe. I don't know. But that's the 49ers, man. Let's get into the Seahawks now, with Russell Wilson and their new addition, Jamal Adams. Yeah, like, the Jamal Adams trade, I think the Jets won it after some hard thought. But, like, you have to also take into account, like, they just got arguably the best safety in the NFL. He's the best safety in the NFL, in my opinion, at least, for whatever that's worth. But they also gave up 2 first-round picks and Bradley McDougald. Did they give up like a third or a fourth too? They gave up a lot for a player that the Jets really had no leverage in keeping. Like, I don't know. That's way more than I thought they were gonna get for Jamal Adams. Considering they have no leverage, it's either you get rid of him or he doesn't come back and you get nothing for him. And like, the Seahawks gave up 2 first-round picks. That's crazy. I don't know if I would do that. Even though Jamal Adams is so good and so valuable to a team. It's just that that's a steep offer for someone that the team giving them up has no leverage in keeping. That's steep. That's a bit questionable, But yeah. Seattle Seahawks. What was their record last year? Like 11-5, 10-6. They played a shit ton of close games. Like all their games were like within 1 score. If I'm not all their games, but a very high percentage of their games within 1 score. Okay, they went 11-5. They went 11-5 with a 7-point differential. They might be another candidate. Like, the thing is, I could make a case for every team regressing. Like, I already made my case with the 49ers. I could say the Seahawks might not win as many close games as they did this past season, as your point margin is, like, reminiscent of a bad team. But I don't think they're a bad team because they have Russell Wilson. And I will say this, the play calling, the lack of passing in the early quarters and early downs of the game does hold the team back. Like, you're going into games and you're going into the second half with some pretty bad teams, like, knotted up, like 10-10. Like, the play calling is really conservative. Like, they arguably could have been in the Super Bowl this past season if they didn't punt the ball back to Aaron Rodgers with, like, 3 minutes left in the game. That's just not a good move. You don't do that in the playoffs or in the regular season, for that matter. You don't give the ball to a elite quarterback, or I went a little controversial. I don't know if he's elite anymore, but you don't give the ball to someone who is that dangerous and potentially can be elite any given drive. And he was hot as hell that game. Had probably his best game of the season that game. And you just gave him the ball back with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. That makes no sense. Like, that, you can't be that conservative in the playoffs. And that's why they got burned. Now, their conservative play calling in effort to quote-unquote protect Russell Wilson, I guess, because they don't think he can pass at high volume, like, whatever. Like, they take the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands way too often. They run the ball. Like, they to quote-unquote take pressure out of Russell Wilson. Like, third and long isn't taking pressure off of your quarterback. That's putting immense pressure on your quarterback. Like, it's okay to pick up a first down on first down or second down. But instead, they rather run the ball twice and then give the ball over. Like, okay, like, with a quarterback that good, you can't run a game plan that's catered to, like, a Blake Bortles-esque quarterback, one that's not that good. You're trying to protect. You don't want him to throw that much. Like, you don't have to do that. You have like, the second best quarterback in the NFL. Like, you don't have Blake Bortles. Like, you're allowed to throw the ball at high volume when you have someone as good as Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, though, got me a little heated, man. The Seattle Seahawks last season finished 4th in EPA per dropback, and they finished 12th in EPA per rush play. The difference in EPA per pass and rush is pretty marginal. It's pretty not marginal. It's pretty big. 12th in rushing EPA is negative, and 4th is way positive. Like, okay, you have arguably the best quarterback in the league, and you decide to take the ball out of his hands. And, like, it's just weird, man. But you still have Russell Wilson. You still have Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. The weapons are pretty good there, especially to cater to Russell Wilson's strengths of throwing the ball deep. I mean, at least that's what the Seahawks get right. They have Jamal Adams, who, I mean, wouldn't be surprised if they have him on the field playing linebacker in their 70% base defense. They ran base defense 69% of the time. That led the league by a lot. The second highest was Arizona Cardinals at 31% of their snaps in base defense. Like, that is insane. This is 2020, and you're running sets with 3 linebackers on the field 70% of the time. And that's why Bobby Wagner took a bit of a step back this season, because, like, he's on the field all the time, covering receivers a lot more than he normally does. Like, I don't know how you could do that. I don't know how you could play base defense in 2020 with 3 linebackers on the field for that high a percentage of your snaps. It just doesn't make sense. It's not really that logical. But if you want to do that, you have Jamal Adams, who could excel in that role. It's really going to be interesting. I really wonder how they're going to use Jamal Adams. Are they going to use him like a Cam Chancellor? Are they going to use him as a legit linebacker? Like, I don't know. They had a Jordan Brooks in the offseason, though. Darrell Taylor, Damian Lewis. Had a pretty bad draft. Jordan Brooks, who I thought I was actually like relatively high on, so, like I still wouldn't take him in the first round. Uh, Even though he was an underrated coverage player, I guess. Even though I wouldn't say he was as good as a Patrick Queen or a run stopping linebacker in the first round, isn't a great pick. Chargers trading up for Kenneth Murray, crazy. But the Seahawks, man, they're a good team. Like they have Quentin Dunbar, who's coming off of a career year, was one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL last season. Like, I guess he's free of his charges, some of his robbery charges. Yeah, he is coming off of a career year, after being like on the Redskins. Like we traded him for a 5th round pick. That's crazy. Like not arguably. I mean, he was one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL last season, and we traded him for a 5th round pick. Like, I don't know if we evaluated his value correctly. He wasn't terrible his whole career. He wasn't this good though, but he had been decent before, and we need decent players in coverage. But this isn't about the Redskins. I ramble a lot, get off topic a lot. But their secondary and their back 7 looks pretty good with Quandre Diggs, who was pretty good in Seattle, and I think he was just underrated overall in this career. He's an underrated safety. Jamal Adams, Bobby Wagner, Clinton Dunbar, if you can stay at that level, he's one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL. Yeah. You still have Shaquille Griffin, who, I mean, he's not that good. He had a pretty good year this past season though, but like overall in his career he hasn't been that good. The pass rush is bad, but like if your secondary could play well, I don't think it's gonna hurt that bad, but like their secondary could not be great. Like Quentin Dunbar could regress back to slightly above average, like to average to maybe slightly above or slightly below any given week. Shaquille Griffin could play like he did Shaquille Griffin could play to the baseline of his career, and that wouldn't be good. And Trey Flowers could be Trey Flowers, which also isn't good. Which then, when you have no pass rush on top of that, it's a pretty bad coverage unit. But, like, I don't know. You still have Bobby Wagner in place. Like, if they stop running stop running base defense 70% of the time, I think that automatically makes their defense better. But, whatever. We don't know if that's going to happen. Because, Pete Carroll, really old school coach, stuck in his ways, It's okay. Not really. It's not okay. But, like, it would really help. It would really help your defense out just by getting faster. Like, imagine going up against the Cardinals, who play the most 10 personnel in the NFL, and you're running base defense almost every play of that game, against a team that runs 4 wide receivers at the highest rate in the NFL. Like, that's not a good matchup on paper. But like Russell Wilson, like I said, and I want to add this. I was talking about how the games are close. Like, I think that a lot of their games are close. Like, there's a couple instances of this in the season where they, like, go up by a pretty big margin and, like, stop and then get really conservative. Stop passing the ball really at all. Just start running the ball, and then teams just climb their way back in to the point where you're in a close game that you had full control over throughout 3 quarters of that game, throughout, like, the first half or so, and then you just start running the ball, and the team just climbs their way back in, and I think that's their problem. Like, if they can get a little bit more aggressive, pass the ball a little bit more, like, I think this team could take the division. But, like, even with the talent that's on this team, just like the conservativeness in key games and key events of games and key areas, and the fact that they could already be due for a bit of regression from a winning close games standpoint, like, the outlook on this season could be pretty good or could not be. That being said, I don't really know if I like. It's between the Seahawks and the 49ers to win the division. Like I think the Cardinals are closer than people might give them credit for, but like the division is it's the Seahawks and the 49ers division. It's more of the 49ers division, the Seahawks division to lose because I think like they're better in the key areas like quarterback, wide receiver, O-line still is garbage. Like they got Dwayne Brown still, but like other than that, it's bad. But they're better in key areas like wide receiver, quarterback by a pretty wide margin. This quarterback. I don't know about their secondary. I mean, they're better at the most important position on the field by a wide margin than the 49ers, which is helpful. But like, Kyle Shanahan's a better coach than Pete Carroll, so I don't know. It's the Seahawks division to lose because they're a better team in the key areas of football. We'll just have to see if they fumble the bag this time, you know. But even with that being said, all the close games, the conservativeness, they were still one game away from being a 1 seed and having a home field advantage throughout the playoffs, which is interesting. They were like 1 inch away from having the 1 seed, and they didn't get it. And they came out. They had to play the Eagles, which was a relatively easy matchup. The Eagles limped their way into the playoffs. Then they played the Packers, who were fraudulent, and like the Seahawks, who might have been a bit fraudulent themselves. Packers won that game, and then like some questionable decisions from like a 4th down aggressiveness perspective and all that type of stuff. But it is what it is, though. You know, that's the Seattle Seahawks. Now let's get into the Arizona Cardinals, who added DeAndre Hopkins this offseason. DeAndre Hopkins added to this team is a huge add. And it was in one of the most lopsided trades in NFL history. I would say there's literally zero way the Texans can recoup that value that they gave up because they traded for a running back who hasn't been good in 4 years on a bad contract, who's dealt with injuries. And to be honest, Duke Johnson might be the better running back on that team. He hasn't had high volume, Duke Johnson. But like, if like his broken tackle percentages are elite. He was like 1st or 2nd this past season in broken tackle, enforced missed tackle percentage. Let me check real quick. This isn't about the Texans or Duke Johnson. I mean, I could bring him up. Like, this is about the trade, I guess. This segment right here is about the trade. He was 2nd in broken tackle percentage. David Johnson ranked 50th in broken tackle percentage, which was last out of all qualifying running backs. That's crazy. Like, wild difference. Duke Johnson's a good receiver, too. Like, Duke Johnson's like a better running back than David Johnson, and David Johnson's on a bad contract, and you give up DeAndre Hopkins. That trade makes no sense, because typically, in trades like that, where you're getting off of a contract that, like, you don't want, and is probably, presumably, nobody wants, then, except for the Texans, apparently, you normally give up a pick, if they gave up Duke Johnson and the 7th overall pick. Still, wait, did they have the 7th or the? No, they had the 7th. No, they had the 8th. And so if you give up David Johnson and the 8th overall pick for DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, it's a better trade than what you got. Still a bad one, but you didn't add a 1st round pick. You added a 2nd, whatever. I mean, they had no picks in their draft anyway, so I mean, I guess that helped. But like, you could have had a 1st rounder, but you just gave up DeAndre Hopkins and didn't even get a 1st round pick. That's crazy. The steal of the heist of the century for the Arizona Cardinals. Wild. Absolutely crazy. That's lunacy. You gotta be kidding me. How can you give... That is crazy. How can you do that? That's wild. They fleeced the Texans. And then in the draft, they pick up from the North Carolina blunder, the Panthers getting Derek Brown Like, I mean, I have more faith he'll be a good player than Isaiah Simmons, but like if they both hit their ceiling, Isaiah Simmons is way more valuable and like way better. But like they might not both hit their ceiling, but like it's still not a great value add by the Panthers. Great value add by the Cardinals. Like they could have went offensive line. I think their offensive line is a tad bit underrated. Kyler Murray got sacked a lot, but if you look at some of the more advanced numbers, like the sacks that are on the quarterback's fault due to bad pocket presence, maybe like running out of your blockers, leverage, all that type of stuff, like holding on to the ball way too long, all stuff that Kyler Murray does. Like Kyler Murray accounted for 23 of the 47 sacks that he was of the 47 times he was sacked. Kyler Murray credited for 23 of them, which is a record since 2006. He was credited with 23 of the sacks. Like, he did not help that offensive line out in any way, shape, or form. But, like, okay, like, around draft time, I was like, okay, look at this. You had DJ Humphries, who was decent. Justin Pugh, who was a pretty damn good guard. Center is rough, actually. What does it have, like, Mason Cole? Like, center's rough. I mean, you could protect the offensive line with the air raid scheme, which is what they did. So maybe it's not as good as I think it is, but I also don't think it was terrible. You know, you're going to get back Marcus Gilbert, who's been a solid tackle, even though, like, you don't get him back now because he opts out. Like, Tristan Wirfs would have helped, but you have Josh Jones now. So you either play him at right tackle or DJ Humphries at right tackle, and, like, your problem's probably solved. Josh Jones, who I had as my tackle number 4 above Mekhi Becton, they got him in the 3rd round. Isaiah Simmons and Josh Jones in the 3rd round. That is a steal. I gave that draft an A+ in my draft grades video, I think. But that was a steal. Isaiah Simmons at 8. Like, I mean, I don't think that was something the Cardinals thought was possible, honestly. Because, like, I mean, you could argue Tristan Wirfs, who would be a great pick for them to, like, you know, athletic, get out there on screens. Stuff that they like to do is they run the highest percentage of screens in the NFL, which is one thing I also want to get into with DeAndre Hopkins. How are they going to use DeAndre Hopkins in this air raid system? Like, they run the highest percentage. Are they going to use him like Fitzgerald, like using him on screens? I don't think that's a great idea. I mean, it's also not a bad one because he's pretty decent after the catch. I mean, it's not great because, like, I mean, his stats after the catch aren't that good because, like, he doesn't create separation. So it's kind of difficult for him to create yards after the catch because, like, every time like, almost all the times when he catches the ball, someone's already, like, bringing him down to the ground because he doesn't create that much separation in his routes. It's either catch point separation, like being able to create just enough separation and get the ball at the catch point, or, like, he's just mossing guys. Like, yeah, it's still going to be a good pickup. It might make Kyler Murray a bit fundamentally worse because, you know, when in doubt, chuck it to DeAndre Hopkins, which is what Deshaun Watson did a couple times, multiple times within his career. He's a pretty good safety blanket for the fact that he won't drop, like, he'll catch the ball no matter what. Whether he's open, covered, doesn't matter. He'll catch the ball, which is, you know, will make the results for Kyler Murray way better, even though there might be some plays where Kyler Murray is just heaving it up towards DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah. And there's a lot of plays on Kyler Murray's tape right now where he's just, like, no one's getting open. He's, like, praying for someone to catch the ball. It's like he's throwing with some great anticipation, some great touch towards the sidelines and all that type of stuff, just praying someone catches the ball. Because, like, no one gets open. Like, the receiver is, like, I mean, I liked Christian Kirk a lot coming out, but he hasn't been close to what I expected him to be. Like, what I expected of Christian Kirk is, like, kind of what Deebo Samuel is, but he hasn't been that, that's safe to say. But, like, yeah, I think the arrow is definitely pointing upwards for the Arizona Cardinals. Cliff Kingsbury, a good young coach. DeAndre Hopkins, that's big. Isaiah Simmons. Now, their secondary, on the other hand, could be bad. Like, Byron Murphy, low-key, might have been one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL. Allowed, like, 10 touchdowns. Whole bunch of other stuff. But, like, it's kind of understandable when you look at the fact that at times in the season, early in the season, before Patrick Peterson came back from his suspension, Byron Murphy was playing shadow coverage against guys like Julio Jones. Hold on, let me get the exact guys. Okay, so Byron Murphy was playing shadow coverage against Julio Jones. I mean, Darius Slayton. I mean, that's not good, though. That's not a good player, so, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, he's not a bad player. Like, he's just not Julio Jones level. But he was playing shadow coverage against Julio Jones. Julio Jones beat him pretty well. And then Patrick Peterson came back, which definitely helped Byron Murphy, even though he still wasn't good even when he was there. So, that really isn't an excuse you can make for Byron Murphy. He just wasn't good last year. Now, the learning curve for cornerbacks is pretty steep from college to pro. So could we see a step up from Byron Murphy this year, which would take the secondary from bad to pretty good with Patrick Peterson and Byron Murphy? But Byron Murphy was so bad that he needs to take more of like a jump than a step. Because even if he takes a step up, he's still bad. Because he was like in the depths of hell in terms of like cornerback play. He was terrible. But like I don't know. And you have Isaiah Simmons, who I don't know how they're going to use him either. Probably, like I heard that they were just going to use him as just a linebacker, which is, I mean, kind of a bit of a waste of his talent. A little bit of a waste of his talent. Yeah. But this team, has Kenyon Drake. I think they have one of the better running offenses in the NFL. They are run first in terms of like their ratio. But like their run game is a bit different. It's not like just pound it up the gut and hope you get 4 yards. It's more like they were 14th in EPA per play, in EPA per running play, which is above teams like the San Francisco 49ers, Cleveland Browns with Nick Chubb. It's above some teams that have good running backs / good running offenses. Like their offense is good for running backs in terms of the fact that it's going to create open holes for them to run through. And Kenyon Drake is actually pretty good at making people miss. As in his career, other than this past season, oddly enough, he's had a top 5 forced missed tackle percentage every year of his career. Or maybe not top 5. Hold on, let me actually fact check myself right quick. 2017, he had the 6th highest forced missed tackle percentage and the 3rd highest in 2018. But this year, he took a pretty big nosedive, and he had the 25th forced missed tackle percentage, which, for perspective, ranked him above guys like Dalvin Cook, interestingly enough, Jordan Howard, Devonta Freeman, Kerryon Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Marlon Mack, Miles Sanders. Like, it's not great. If I minimize the filter a little bit, he ranks 18th, which is above Dalvin Cook, Carlos Hyde, Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, and he ranks 18th. So, like, he's not bad at forcing missed tackles. He's also, like, this past season wasn't that great at it either. But, historically in his career he has been, and this offense creates a ton of space. You're spreading the field out. You're dictating the box count, which is something that people don't realize. People say, oh, yeah, this guy ran up against the most stacked boxes. It's mainly because the offense is doing. Like, if you come out running heavy personnel, the defense is going to run a heavy personnel. So if you come out running lighter personnel, you're not going to have a whole bunch of linebackers out there if a team has 4 wide receivers out there. So if a team is running 4 wide receiver sets, they're creating more space, dictating the box count, and basically giving Kenyon Drake more space to work and a better expected yards per rush play, even though, like I mean, that's a stat, but I don't think the Cardinals were that high in that stat because, I don't know. But, like, they do create more yards before contact or before anything just because they're so spread out and they're just creating space for runners to run through, and Kenyon Drake is like the perfect fit for that running scheme and this offense. But that won't matter if Kyler Murray doesn't take a step up. Kyler Murray won the Rookie of the Year. I wouldn't have picked him for Rookie of the Year. He really wasn't that great. You could make an argument that Gardner Minshew was a better quarterback than Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray this past season, like, he missed a ton of throws. I mean, he took good care of the ball for the most part. His pocket presence was terrible. but he still gave some high end plays to really like get excited for, you know. But like his accuracy was kind of all over the place. So like he does have the high end throws. His accuracy on like the deep stuff is pretty damn good. But like the 10 to 19 range, he was like bottom quadrant of the league in terms of accurate pass percentage this past season, which is like not really what I expected from him, but yeah, he was on the lower end. Okay, so in the 0 to 9 range, he was like 5th in accurate pass percentage. And then in the 10 to 19 range, he was like 5th to the bottom. He was down there with guys like Jacoby Brissett, Mason Rudolph, Mitchell Trubisky. Well, he's way better than Mitchell Trubisky in that area because Mitchell Trubisky has a higher uncatchable pass percentage. So does Kyler Murray. He has a pretty high uncatchable pass percentage. Kyler Murray wasn't that good this past season. And people are talking about him as like an MVP candidate. Like, he has the weapons there, sure. But, like, his play wasn't that good last season. So, like, I think we're crowning him a bit too quickly than we should be. Like, I think we should be worried a bit more than we should just be praising him, saying, oh, yeah, MVP candidate. Like, it's definitely possible with DeAndre Hopkins there. Cliff Kingsbury is a good coach, in my opinion. But yeah, I think we're definitely crowning him a bit too quickly. Like, comparing him to, like, Gardner Minshew, I mean, Minshew was a bit better, just everywhere. I don't know. I think we might be crowning Kyler Murray a bit too quickly. And if he doesn't take the year 2 leap, then, I mean, this team is, like, kind of fucked. Because he wasn't that great last year. He really wasn't. He had some high-end games, a bunch of high-end plays. I think they'll actually use him in the run game a bit more because, like, it was, like, no reason to risk it. That team was terrible last year. But, yeah. I think they might use him in the run game a bit more, which might open up a bit more passing when you have a quarterback that can run at that elite of a level. Like, I don't think he is Lamar Jackson, but in terms of a runner, he's probably like top 3 with the ball in his hands as a runner, as a quarterback at least. I don't think he's Lamar Jackson level, but he could do something similar to Lamar Jackson if you're running, like if you want to put him out there on options, just design QB runs, which I mean they did a pretty good amount of this past season, compared to some other teams. Let me look at the exact number of design runs that they ran for Kyler Murray this past season. I think it was like 3rd for quarterbacks. It was 2nd. He ran 65 design runs. He scrambled 26 times, so like he wants to win from the pocket, just like Lamar Jackson, interestingly enough. We'll get into that later on. Like, Lamar Jackson has a perception of like not being a pocket passer, I think. You know, he has like a lower scramble percentage, and he was only like 6th in scrambles this past season. But Kyler Murray wants to win with his arm from the pocket. Maybe sometimes to his detriment, but he wants to win with his arm from the pocket, which is a good thing. And it's kind of a double-edged sword because like sometimes you might leave some stuff on the table from a rushing standpoint, but like passing is more valuable, and you typically get more yards passing than running, even if you're a quarterback. So, yeah, but they could use it more in the design run game, which could open up the passing game due to the threat of having a quarterback who can be that dangerous on the ground. Like, having a running quarterback really does help your passing game. Like, maybe the running back run game doesn't help your quarterback, but, like, the threat of your quarterback taking off is way greater than the threat of a running back running. But, because, like, just at least just raw statistically, they're way better at running the ball than running backs. You really don't like having a quarterback that can just take off on you and run really changes and messes with your defense and your defensive strategy, you know, because like, okay, we have to cover all these receivers. Oh man, now the quarterback just ran off for 20 yards. Like, it's detrimental to your offense, to your defense, I mean. But yeah, Kyler Murray, you know, the 2-year leap, the 2nd-year leap, you know, you have the Carson Wentz, the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jackson. You know, maybe he's Like maybe he's next. Like it's not something that happens every year though. As like it's just not something that happens every. It's not something that happens every year. So, like just being the second year breakout theory, Kyler Murray could be next because he has the supporting cast around him to do it for sure. But he himself has to improve in some pretty key areas. Now I do like what Kyler Murray can do. I think he's a good quarterback. But like he still has some room to improve. He's not a perfect player right now. It's not like he was just being brought it's not like he was totally being brought down by the supporting cast, because there's areas in which he didn't help them out, and these areas in which they didn't help him out. So the supporting cast should be better, and there could be this nice meeting in the middle where the supporting cast really elevates him and he elevates the supporting cast at the same time, and this team is pretty good. I'm pretty high on the Cardinals. I think they could be a positive record team, which, I mean, might not mean that much, but like their schedule is easy. They play the NFC East and the AFC West, which isn't that hard. I mean, in the AFC East, which are two relatively easy divisions. I mean, like the Bills have a tough defense, so do the Pats, but both of those teams could have some sketchy offenses. The Dolphins and the Jets have sketchy on both ends of the field, or sketchy on both sides of the field, which, could be a problem when you're going up against a team like the Cardinals, who can have a pretty damn good offense. The Cardinals' offense last year was like much better than it was in the prior season with Josh Rosen. Like not much changed. The only thing that changed was the coach and quarterback, which I think kind of show how much better they are than Josh Rosen and Wilkes. But the team was better than the team was solid. They were a solid team. They were a bit better. I wouldn't say they're better than their record at all. But the only thing that changed was the coach and quarterback, and it changed definitely for the better. So they're a pretty good team for the future. They this year might not be their year per se, but what about next year, the year after that? They could be a pretty damn good team. They're a team that I don't think they're a slouch. They're a team that you say, oh, you got the Cardinals, easy game. They're a team that's tough and could probably compete with almost any team in the NFL, offensively at least, with the weapons. And if Kyler Murray takes a bit of a step up next season, but the Cardinals are, I think they're slightly underrated. I think they're a bit underrated. Well, let's get into the last team of this preview, the Los Angeles Rams, moving into their new stadium. The Los Angeles Rams this offseason got rid of Todd Gurley, who was on a big and bad contract. Got rid of him, though. And they drafted Cam Akers, a running back, with their first pick of the draft. Then Van Jefferson. Terrell Burgess, I liked that pick, but, it might not have been a great draft. It wasn't a really good draft for the Rams. I think I gave that draft grade. I think I gave them a grade higher than I probably would now, considering everything. They add a running back with their first pick after getting rid of Gurley, which doesn't really make sense as you drafted a running back the year prior. So that shows what you think about him, huh? Cam Akers, I do like Cam Akers as a player, but you didn't solve the actual issue with the running game. The problem wasn't Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley, maybe not from a results standpoint, but from a process standpoint, had maybe the best season of his career, especially when it comes to forced missed tackle percentage, which he posted his highest number in that stat category, but still results-wise, he wasn't good. Which is because the actual issue with the running game was the regression from the offensive line, and it was a hard one. They went from, it was a steep one, let me say that. It was a steep regression from their offensive line, going from one of the better ones in the NFL to one of the worst ones in the NFL. And consequently, every running back, Todd Gurley took a step back because the situation around him and the offensive line in front of him took a step down. And then he took a step down. And he took a step out of Los Angeles and went to Atlanta, who, might have a similarly as bad situation from a run blocking standpoint, but whatever. It is what it is. Todd Gurley, for the first time, okay, so Todd Gurley this past season finished 15th in forced missed tackle percentage. If I close the filter down a bit more, he finished 10th, posting his highest number of 19.2. In his quote-unquote MVP year, he finished 38th with a 12.1 forced missed tackle percentage. I close that filter down, he finishes 19th out of 29 in that area. So he really wasn't great at forcing missed tackles. He was a bit below average in that area. 2017, he had where's he at? 2017, he was 28th with a 13.9. In 2016, he was 43rd with a 10% forced missed tackle percentage. So from that standpoint, he had a career year of creating on top of his blocking, but the blocking wasn't giving him much to create on top of. So he finished results-wise with arguably his worst season. From a yards per carry. Wait, he had 3.9 yards per carry though, which isn't good, but it also isn't. I don't think that's even a career low for him. Todd Gurley this past season had a 3.8 per carry, which is his worst. No, it's not his worst. In 2016, he had a 3.2 yards per carry. So this is his second worst yards per carry of his career, and the highest forced missed tackle percentage of his career. The offensive line was bad, and he suffered because of it. Now, if you address the offensive line, which, I mean, there weren't too many options there. Like, Josh Jones was by far the best one left by the time they picked, because he went in the third round, which was a mega steal for the Cardinals, as I said earlier. But you can add a lineman, which would fix the actual issue of the running game and could solve the problems of the passing game. But the thing about linemen is, for the most part, they take a bit to hit their final form. Like, they have one of the bigger learning curves in football, so they don't contribute off the rip most of the time. So if you need them to contribute straight away, you might be a bit disappointed with what they do in their first season. But I think that the Rams urgently need offensive line help, so I don't think that it would hurt them to pick an offensive lineman, because he might not be worse than what they had in place already. Havenstein took a big step back this past season. Whitworth took a slight step back. The offensive line just regressed as a whole, and it hurt their entire offense. Passing offense, running offense, it hurt everything. Jared Goff, probably an average quarterback. Maybe a bit above that. Maybe. He's a guy with this perfect supporting cast and scheme and all that type of stuff, and he's gonna be pretty good. With everything around him being perfect, he'll be a good quarterback. Now, if everything around him isn't perfect, then you might run into a bit of an issue. And this year they might run into a bit of an issue. Their offensive line isn't good. I don't think their receivers are elite. Like, they lost Brandon Cooks, who, helped Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods out by clearing out, running more clear out routes, giving them more space to work underneath. And this offense is desperately missing a vertical presence to the offense. Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, very limited deep production, and they work more on the intermediate and short range. Cooper Kupp more the short range. Robert Woods more the intermediate. They are good at what they do, but they're still missing a major element to their offense this year, which could make them a bit worse. The weapons are you have a bunch of the same guy, and that same guy is a attack the short range of the field type of thing. So they could run some more quick game, which they have been desperately missing, which could have protected the offensive line and Jared Goff, but they don't do that. So Jared Goff has been under pressure a lot, as the offensive line isn't that good. But Jared Goff, one thing he was pretty good at though was not turning his pressure into sacks. His pressure is converted into sacks at the lowest rate in the NFL this past season. So, he was pretty damn good at that. But could you counter him to do that again? I don't know. Maybe not. So you would want to fix the issue. So you have a bunch of guys who win pretty quickly in the short ranges of the field, in Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. So maybe you run a bit more quick passing game so you could, help the offensive line out a bit and help Jared Goff out a bit. Because, it's something that they don't do. And something that they need to do. But yeah, they have an offensive line that's regressing. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball, though. Their defense is oh, wait. I said their offensive line is regressing? That's not what I meant to say. I meant to say their offensive line regressed last year. We'll have to see if they, maybe swing back the other direction, which is possible. They fell. We can say they fell hard from their Super Bowl run in 2018. But anyway, let's go to the defense. Aaron Donald, probably the best defensive player in the NFL, regardless of position. He is a beast, so dominant. You also have Jalen Ramsey, who, you still haven't paid. Is he even under contract? They are in cap hell right now. The Rams are in a really bad spot contract-wise and, cap space-wise. You have Jalen Ramsey, who has one more year left on his deal. You have to pay him soon. But he's a great cornerback. Especially, it helps out guys like Troy Hill, who are pretty good, especially when you don't have to have him over guarding guys that will probably physically dominate him, like a Julio Jones or I don't know, because I was trying to think of someone in division, but they don't have none of those guys in the division. And to go outside the division, place against those bigger guys, those more physically dominating guys. Jalen Ramsey can guard those guys now, and Troy Hill can get slightly easier matchups, and he thrived because of it. Jalen Ramsey is good. Maybe a slight bit overrated. Slight bit overrated. Some people think he's the best cornerback in the NFL. I think he's third-ish. So, that's the difference between, me and some other people. I think, for the future, he's probably the best cornerback in the league because of his age of being, 26? 25? He is slow loading, 25 years old. So, for the future, he's probably the guy you want to have because he's good and young. Besides the point, their defense isn't terrible. They lost Corey Littleton, who has been one of the better linebackers in the NFL for the past couple of seasons. Don't have him anymore. Their defense could be bad. I think the Rams could be bad, though. The Rams just don't... I don't know, man. They're an average team to potentially below average. But they have an easy schedule, The AFC East and the NFC East are the divisions they play, And, that's not difficult. So they could finish better record-wise than I think they could. I think they are a dark horse candidate roster-wise to be a top 10 pick. But their schedule probably won't allow that. And I do think McVay is pretty good. He could. But McVay hasn't changed, though. His scheme took over the league, and it kind of, they caught up to it. And he hasn't, evolved. Which hinders the team. And if he doesn't find a way to evolve the next couple of years, maybe it's time to give up on McVay. I don't know. But yeah, that's the Rams, and that's the video. I hope you enjoy the podcast, and hope you come here and watch it again. Follow my Twitter. It's down on the thing, on the display. It's right there. Subscribe, hit the like button, bro. It helped me out a lot. But yeah, I'll see you guys maybe tomorrow. And yeah, I'm out.